You've seen them in museums. Those ancient wrapped figures lying behind glass, looking almost peaceful. But here's the thing. There is nothing peaceful about how they got there. Mummification is one of the most fascinating and deeply disturbing practices in human history, and the full story is far more intense than anything they teach you in school. Let's start with ancient Egypt, because that's where most people's minds go first. And honestly, the Egyptians were operating on a level of body preservation that still amazes scientists today. But the process itself was brutal. When someone died, embalmers, a specialized class of priests, had roughly 70 days to complete the mummification process. And those 70 days were not pretty. First, they had to remove the organs. The stomach, intestines, lungs, and liver were all pulled out and stored in separate containers called canopic jars. Each jar was dedicated to a different god, because the Egyptians weren't just preserving a body. They were preparing a person for the afterlife. Now here's where it gets really dark. The brain? They didn't think it was important. They believed the heart was the center of intelligence and emotion, so the brain got scooped out through the nose using a long metal hook. They would break through the nasal bone, scramble the brain tissue, and then tilt the head so it drained out. Just let that sink in for a moment. After the organs were removed, the body was packed and covered in natron, a naturally occurring salt, for about 40 days. This dried the body out completely. The skin would shrink, darken, and pull tight against the bones. Then, embalmers would stuff the body with linen, sawdust, or even sand to give it shape again. Sometimes they inserted false eyes, painted the skin, or added wigs to make the deceased look more lifelike. The whole thing was part preservation science, part theater. But Egypt isn't the only place where mummification happened, and some of the other examples are even more unsettling. In ancient China, scientists discovered a 2,000-year-old mummy known as Lady Di. She was so perfectly preserved that her skin was still soft, her joints still flexible, and her organs were intact enough to perform an autopsy. They even found her last meal still in her stomach. Researchers aren't entirely sure how she was preserved so completely, but it involved layers of wrapping, sealed coffins, and a mysterious acidic liquid surrounding her body. It's an incredible scientific find, and also deeply eerie. Then there are the bog bodies of Northern Europe. These weren't intentionally mummified in the traditional sense. People were killed, often in ritualistic ways, and placed in peat bogs, where the acidic, oxygen-poor environment naturally preserved them. Tollenmann, discovered in Denmark, still had stubble on his face and a peaceful expression despite the fact that he had been hanged. The bogs preserved soft tissue while dissolving bones, creating some of the most haunting human remains ever found. And let's not forget the Inca culture of South America, where the mummified bodies of children were found at the tops of mountains. These were sacrificial offerings. Children chosen for their physical perfection, brought up to high altitudes, and left to die from exposure. Scientists found that some of them had been given alcohol and coca leaves in their final hours, likely to reduce fear. The preservation at those altitudes was so complete that researchers could analyze the contents of their last meals and trace the final weeks of their lives through their hair. What makes mummification so haunting isn't just the process. It's what it reveals about us as a species. Across wildly different cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, human beings shared this deep, desperate need to hold on to the dead, to preserve them, to keep some version of them in the world, because letting go completely felt impossible. Whether it was the Egyptian belief in the afterlife, Chinese reverence for ancestors, or Inca ritual sacrifice, mummification was always about more than a body. It was about meaning. And that's what makes it genuinely scary. Not the horror movie version with bandages and curses, but the real version, the one where real people with real lives were taken apart and put back together in hopes that something of them would survive. That desperation, that refusal to accept death, echoes through every museum case and every archaeological dig site. The mummies aren't just artifacts, they're reminders. Death has always terrified us, and we've always found extraordinary, and sometimes horrifying ways to fight it.